Today, we're going to discuss performance-based and athletic-based goals, what they are and what you should prioritize, or if there's anything that you need to prioritize at all. I think we all came from a different background. We've all started with similar journeys, but then moved on and changed our goals slightly. For me, my goals at the moment are definitely performance-based. And just yesterday, I hit a massive PB that I really wanted to hit like a couple of months ago. And I left the day feeling so stoked and on such a high, which has been so funny because athletically or like look wise, I probably don't feel the most comfortable at the moment, but then the PB just outweighed everything and I was like, yeah, cool, I'm on the right track. Performance-based goals for me. What about you guys?
Well, before we kind of share, I was like, I know yesterday I saw your stories, but like at the end of the day and after seeing you a few times in meetings yesterday, I was like, oh, I wish I said something sooner, or I wish I saw something sooner to congratulate you. That was awesome. It was so good and it looked so easy as well.
I really surprised myself there because it didn't move that well last week, and then my program suggested to push and I was like, oh, okay, I'll just do it. And then I hyped myself up in my head. I was like, I can do this. It's going to come up the floor. It's going to come up the floor. It's going to leave the floor. And it left the floor and it was actually not too bad.
Yeah, it was smooth.
All right, side tangent.
What was the question?
We started with the side tangent. The question is what your goals are.
So goal-wise, definitely I've had some different goals over the years. I'd have to say it's definitely a combination of performance and aesthetics. I'd be lying if I said aesthetics weren't in there. I know I've touched on it in previous podcasts. I have come from a history of an eating disorder. I do have body dysmorphia. So in terms of putting all the weight into aesthetics, that has never really been the healthiest place to be. Performance definitely helps me get those wins, and compounding wins. Honestly, winning is what gives you confidence, and then failure is what builds the character. So being able to compound wins, whether it's through a performance-based goal, is always nice to have, I would say. So definitely a combination of both.
For me, this is such an interesting topic because at the moment I find myself in this similar predicament of I'm really enjoying my performance-based goals. I'm really enjoying the process, the programming, the milestones, the PBs. It's such a huge endorphin rush and it's so great for my self-esteem. But at the same time, I'm going through two different versions of this. I feel like I did that maybe a year ago where it was predominantly performance-based, didn't really care about the aesthetics, kept telling myself I didn't care, didn't shift my eating, my lifestyle, just focused more on the training. And then my body kind of went towards a direction that I wasn't a big fan of. And so now in this period, I'm doing it differently because I knew back then that I wasn't happy with where I was physically, aesthetically. So yeah, at the moment, I'm still enjoying the performance stuff. I'm really enjoying the process, but I'm trying to be a bit more methodical about where my body is aesthetically, which can sometimes be jarring because when you're focusing so much on strength, and you guys would know it too, when you focus so much on strength, technically to get stronger, the physics of you getting stronger needs to kind of come up with you. There's this weird balance of how much of a deficit can you be in order to try and stay lean, but is that going to then knock back your performance? And it's this weird balance you're trying to figure out, how much are you happy to get away with? And I'm definitely finding that at the moment and trying to master the balance a little bit because last year I didn't care and I just was not happy with where I was. Not that I'm saying that that might not be you have to kind of give up the aesthetic goal in order to do the performance goal. But I think because I'm not a professional athlete, I'm competing, but in amateur competitions for the fun of it. But sometimes you have to look at, like, if I'm not a professional athlete, my paycheck isn't dependent on me being at that level. How much do I care versus how much do I care about how I look on a day-to-day basis? I don't know. What about you guys?
You bring up some really good points, and a lot of it has to do with like that self-awareness. Like there is a part where it's like, you know what, I'd be lying if I didn't care. But I want to say almost like fulfillment, the joy or the fun that I have, those come from my performance benchmarks. You know what I mean? Like we have kind of like an aesthetic, but again, like that's so subjective and sometimes that changes. Like at least for me, I can't speak for anyone else. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to be so thick. And then other times I'm like, I want to be able to run as fast as I can. And then I want to be able to bend myself in half. And then I want to lift a car over my head and I want to be so strong. And then it changes so much. Like I went to the CrossFit games last year and I saw these just incredible athletes. I'm like, I'm going to do CrossFit. And it's like, how many CrossFit classes have I done since then? like, you know what I mean? So it's all like, you know, we have to be accountable to ourselves and just like be real with ourselves. Like if aesthetics are important to you, and I would say probably to some capacity it is for a lot of people, or so, I don't know. I'm not going to make any percentage judgments, but for me, I can speak for myself. There is a component of that, but the most joy or fulfillment or actual like satisfaction has come from like saying, hey, I'm going to go do this and doing it. And most often that is much more clear when it's like, I want to lift this amount and you hit that amount. Whereas sometimes aesthetics can be in more of a subjective area where we sometimes feel like it's not enough, or again, speaking from my own experience, maybe like not this enough or not that enough. So having a very clear and objective, measurable goal is incredibly important. And I find that when it comes to a performance-based goal, those tend to be a little bit more, you know, objective versus subjective.
That's such a good point. I think especially when it comes to building muscle, it's so hard to see progress because it takes so long. So if you have a solely aesthetic based goal, and let's say your goal isn't to get leaner, but it's the other way for an aesthetic based goal and you actually want to grow muscle, it's going to be a long journey and it's going to be such slow progress that sometimes it can be disheartening. At least it was for me when I was like, oh, I just want to put on size. And you just don't see the difference. You don't see the difference. You don't see the difference, but you have to put the reps in and you have to put the work in because eventually you'll see the difference. And if I look at photos from me from 5 years ago to now, I'm like, yeah, okay, we've changed. But on the day-to-day, like if I look in the mirror now, I don't see much of a change in body composition. But when I look at my lifts, I'm like, oh, cool. I was able to do 1.5 kilo more here and I was able to do extra reps. So it's, I think, performance-based goals, if someone is really impatient, they can be more motivating because you can see them better, like you explained, Nika, as well. And then on the other side, if you have maybe a weight loss goal, I think you see the difference a lot faster there as well than if you have a muscle building goal. So if your goal is weight loss, not that saying that either or are like harder or easier, but sometimes with a weight loss goal, I think it's easier to see progress because maybe your jeans are feeling a little bit looser, or you're fitting back into one of your dresses, or you're going to see the change on the scale if that's something that you focus on. Whereas if it's like a muscle building goal, the scale goes up and then that goes up, and that then really can be really, really hard on your mindset as well. So I think there's like a fine line of where you want to go and what to choose. And I think a good mix of both is always more motivating. But then again, if your goal is weight loss and your numbers will go down because as you get leaner, you can't push as hard anymore because you're having less fuel for your sessions. And that's something that I have really struggled with like lately is, okay, cool. I was super, super lean here for comp. Probably not feeling the best, probably a bit hangry, probably a bit sassy. And now I'm on the other side where I'm like, I'm really, really strong. I'm feeling really, really good. But body composition wise, I'm like, it could be just like this tat leaner. And then I was speaking to my coach and he's like, you can't be photo shoot lean all year round. I'm like, I know, but just like this little bit, but then getting down to this little bit without trying to manipulate my performance is then again so slow, and it's like such a slow progress. So I think it really depends on why you're doing it and what goals you're choosing. And if you are an impatient person, maybe performance goals are a little bit more motivating for you.
I think I want to add like to that little list that you just had in your hand, because I think a third one is also your mindset, because in the way that or maybe personality type, because if you're the kind of person that is, and there are plenty out there that are like, I am committing to this for a year, no matter what, as soon as I put my mind to it, it's definitely going to happen. I'm accepting that the gains aren't going to be overnight or within a month, but by the end of the year, I'm just going to chip away. And there are some people that are really good at that mindset, that personality type, but the ones where like if I'm not engaged mentally, emotionally, it's really hard for me to stick to something. I think the performance thing is definitely, like, at least the performance focus is definitely the way to go if your problem is sticking to something. Because I think if I look historically at the different things that I've been engaged with in training, it's been martial arts, a bit of bodybuilding because I was teeny tiny, wanted to get bigger. It's the same problem as UV. And then from there, CrossFit, powerlifting, back to CrossFit, and then like Olympic lifting. And I think what I've noticed in those many changes is I do need to be somewhat challenged technically or in terms of skill, or else I'm bored. So yeah, I definitely, I think that's why when friends are like, oh, you should do bodybuilding, well, I do not have the discipline to like just do the same thing, eat that many little calories towards the end. I just don't have the discipline in general. But yeah, I just wanted to add that to your little piece, B.
Definitely speaking to, like, again, the different types of goals too, like, for instance, like you talked about having like a very like linear goal, like when you're preparing for comp, it was like this one objective going all in for that one thing. Sometimes, and that's like what we consider like linear training, like you have one objective and everything, all the movement is going towards that. Your programming is just for that. And then sometimes we'll have like undulating training where maybe there's like two concurrent goals that we want to work at simultaneously. And I kind of just wanted to, for anyone who cared, just kind of differentiate, because I think when we talk about strength training or resistance training, some of this gets all lumped together. And, we may think that we're training for a specific adaptation, when in reality, maybe we're not actually programming or even doing the things that are the most conducive, or maybe we're doing other things that are cannibalizing those gains. Like, as you mentioned, like, you want to do this, but it may make your performance go down in this other area. So kind of like almost like separating and like bucketizing like what that is. Like, there's so many different performance adaptations. You have speed, you have hypertrophy, muscle growth, you have strength. And like some of these, there is overlap. Like, I'd say the two most common probably for our Vitruvian users, we get strength. I want to be stronger. I want to build muscle. And like, yes, these are two different buckets, but there is a lot of overlap. Like when you are looking at hypertrophy, this is purely just muscle size, increasing your muscle size. When you look at strength, this is a function. This is a performance function of how well the muscle unit is able to produce force. So you're looking at function versus just objective, how big is this? When you train for hypertrophy, again, like the concepts are few, the methods are many. You have so many different options. When you train for hypertrophy, you're likely going to take some strength with you. For strength, you're likely to gain some size depending on the programming, but if you wanted to do them exclusively, you can. Like if you just wanted to train hypertrophy and get bigger, and for some reason, personal preference, you're like, I don't want to get any stronger, you can do that. It's all about manipulating the programming. For strength, you see, again, like we're in a weight class, you see martial artists, they're in weight class, MMA fighters, they're in weight classes, they need to add strength, but they can't add size. You can do that too. So all of these things are actually, they are possible. It's just actually being very clear and specific on what you want to do. I would say like probably some people are happy to, if you're not competing in a specific sport or don't care about necessarily like the number on the scale and just want to get bigger and get stronger, you can do that. There's so many things that you can do in conjunction with each other. And just gonna friendly plug, like that's what we're here for too. So you can always ask us, reach out to a coach, Vitruvian coach, schedule a call. We can go through that, because I think what often will happen is we're like, I want this and this, or I just want this, and maybe it's not the most effective plan of action for what you're trying to do. Or maybe you're, running 50 miles in your spare time too, and wondering why a certain adaptation isn't happening. So all of these things are contributing factors. But regardless of what the goal is, I would say the two most important is going to be adherence. Whatever you do, be consistent with it, and progressive overload. So whether that's in strength, whether that's in speed, you want to be going as fast as you can every single, like as often as possible. You want to be getting faster and faster intentionally. So anything you do, going heavier. I'm going to stop there, but basically you want to be able to progressively overload in whatever adaptation that you're targeting or what your objective is.
Yeah, that's so true. That's such a valid point of progressive overload. And I think people forget that sometimes you can have a little bit of both and a little bit of everything, but you have to be specific to your own goals as well. Like I can't just copy your program and expect the same results, because you have different numbers and different weight and different goals to meet. But then also because you're a different person and you've got a different strength history, you've trained for years and years and years. I've only trained for like 5. So it's all going to be different, and it has to be specific to the person. So I think people can easily forget to make sure that they do it specifically for them. Like for me, I can't do Christine's lift. I don't have Christine's mobility. I can't do a high bar squat, unfortunately. So I think, yeah, it also comes back down to like exercise selection specific to your goal, and also specific to like you as a person.
I think also in terms of specificity to you, it's also your lifestyle. We all have very different lifestyles. Sometimes people don't really consider that. Sometimes when it actually happened in the sauna the other day, some lady was saying, "Oh, you look great." Like it was really random. I'm an introvert, so took me a while to warm up in the sauna. Funny. But she was, giving me compliments on like my body and everything. And my usual go-to would be like, oh no, like it's nothing, blah, blah, blah. But what I wanted to make clear, I was like, there's actually a lot of work and a lot of discipline that goes into like getting my body to where it is. It's not perfect. It's not magazine ready or photo shoot ready, but in terms of like body composition and strength and overall, like, I guess, form, I was like, if I were to tell you what my routine was, it would be like now that you have to decide whether that routine is right for you. And it was that I do get up at 5 a.m. to make sure I get to the gym to do my strength accessories, my prehab stuff, and general conditioning. Because as I get older, I've always hated cardio, and that was one of the reasons why I started CrossFit, because I don't do cardio, and I know I'm getting older, it's important. But I'll do all of that and then go to work, eat very regimented like meals to make sure that when I go to the evening to go to Ollie, I've got the calories to be able to perform. And that would also mean that I get home, as soon as I get home, quickly eat something small so I can digest easily, go to bed at 9, and I start start all over again the next day. And then I said weekends. Weekends is Saturday I get my meal prep done so that Sunday I can go do some fun things. But that fun thing is no alcohol. Still go to bed as close as I can to the same hours as the weekday. I was like, now you kind of know what it takes for me to get to this position. I was like, you just have to decide whether that's right for you and that suits your lifestyle and the things that are important to you. Because if it's important to you to go hang out with friends at really late like nights over the weekends, if that's important, then you have to kind of adjust your goal, or at least adjust your training program and training approach so that you can probably still sustain those other things that are really important to you. Maybe you have to pull back on volume. Maybe you have to be a little bit realistic about your performance, if you're going to do that. Or maybe you have to be realistic about when you want your aesthetic goal based on these other things. And I think people will never really know that until you map it out for them, which is why speaking to a coach is always really valuable at any time that you are in your life, because life is also not linear. Lifestyles aren't linear. The same thing doesn't happen from January to December, let alone the beginning of the month to the end of the month. So like doing a check-in to make sure these are the changes in my workload, in my lifestyle. These are now what's important to me, what is realistic in terms of my performance goal / my aesthetic goal. So I think, yeah, lifestyle and is such a huge thing that's also variable with everyone, for sure. And it does have to be considered regardless whether you have a performance or an aesthetic goal.
What's really cool about what you're even speaking to, like breaking down your system, is when you look at that system, you can see the goal. Like, I know it sounds super cheesy, but and again, I like goals because they give you a North Star, but it's like, I want to know your system. Like, what is your current system and like, what are you currently doing? And I can give you an idea of what you're actually getting or what result you can expect from this. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. It's like, break down your system. If you have a system that like when I say works, it works for you. Like, you have your non-negotiables, and then see how tracking that over a month, over 6 months, over a year, where will that lead you? Very cool way to break it down.
I think also like where I find myself, like I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I'm also at this weird stage of, I do want to lift heavy. I do want to see how far I can take my strength in weightlifting. But I'm also at this weird age where I also want to be able to do it for long term. Like I still have a slight aesthetic goal because I still obviously care what I look like. If I ever get invited to a wedding, there's like this huge emotional battle when I put on a dress and I can just see like delts, traps, tries, and I'm like, oh my God, I look like I'm a dude. I don't look like a dude, but like, your view of yourself is always warped. But not only am I trying to like balance the aesthetic, also balance that against my performance, but as I get older, and it might shock everyone that I'm turning 36 out there, if you look at me and think I'm 21, I'm not. I'm one of those youthful people that won't raisin until I'm in my 80s. But if I as I get older, like my joints don't do what, like, I'm getting niggles, or not niggles, but I feel my joints here and there when I'm like, I'm not even old yet, like, but I'm feeling that they don't recover as easily, or I'm finding that I have to, even though my program says this is what I do on the day, I don't think I can sustain like that and then continue on with the rest of my week with the rest of my program. And I've had to almost tell myself as well that I have to be comfortable with that to a certain degree, because the performance stuff and the high that I get from PBs, seeing me lift heavy, like seeing me become faster, I get a real high off that, which is why I film it. But now I have to just be a bit more mindful of, if I'm going to last in my older age, yes, strength training is important, but maybe the extent and intensity that I'm doing it, it's not the kindest to joints. So it's just this weird phase that I'm in terms of switching into like longevity and being accepting of like aesthetic and performance as maybe becoming the secondary goal. Yeah.
That resonates.
That's
Not
a
as
lot.
easy. Yeah.
We're V's the only spring chicken in this bunch. I'm also in my 30s and things do not feel the way they did 10 years ago. Yeah, lots of boo-boos. I've talked about like my recent like hip injury. So, you know, things like relying on a PB right now would not make me feel good. Doing like 20% of my max is hard without pain. So like that's why we say like, you know, goals are going to, they're going to fluctuate. They're going to change, you know? So it's like, you know, after a week of throwing myself a pity party, it's like, okay, what's next? And it's like all about the mobility. And it's like through that you find new ways to move. That's what's so cool about fitness. There's so many different ways and like different modalities and things to do. And you learn new things about yourself. Like, oh my gosh, like I actually really like bending this way and trying and being as flexible as I can. And, you know, that might become a new goal as well. And I think ultimately it comes down to just like feeling good. Like, even like just in terms of like the best we've ever felt, and we can maybe all go around and share like when that like was. I can tell you it wasn't when I was like the smallest. I thought being super skinny and super small, and probably the other side. I know you guys are talking about putting mass on. I was overweight and chubby growing up. When I quit skating, like, yeah, not, I gained a lot of weight, and it was like, I just wanted to be so small. Even throughout my skating career, I had really muscular legs, really muscular glutes. Like I wasn't a stick then. And that was, you know, what the coaches wanted. That's what I was pressured to look like. So all I wanted was to be small, small, small. And then you get to small and you're just, it's hard to walk upstairs. Like you did so, like you do so much damage internally. You don't feel good. You're tired all the time. Like, so just in terms of like feeling good, that's, I don't know. I would say right now, even though I'm injured and achy in certain places, in a lot of ways, it's like the most empowered and confident I felt in like maybe ever. Just, and again, I know you mentioned like about being like magazine ready. I want to be PC police here because I don't even want to use that language, because I think we get into our mind that we have to look a certain way and be a certain way. And I'm guilty of this too. I fall into that mental black hole of being like, this isn't enough, or I don't look like this. And it's like, but like, there's so much that we do. Like, there's so many awesome things that will, again, setting out to like, say you're going to do something and then accomplishing that. There's just like, no one can ever take that away. Like that's so much, it's just constantly building that self-efficacy. And I don't know, to me, that's like the most powerful thing, constantly setting ourselves up for those little wins all the time, because that's what's, as you mentioned previously in the beginning, V, like we're not always going to see the changes that we want. And it's sort of like being so like tunnel vision on this has to be this way. Whereas there are so many wins that we're accruing all around us constantly, and being able to kind of almost like soak that all in is just, it's epic. And it can definitely take you out of a rut. I don't know.
I absolutely love this story. And I think it's so true that, yeah, you have to look at how you feel as well, rather than just at your numbers and how you look. And I think for me, same to you, like, although maybe I feel not the most body confident at the moment, like I used to, but then in the past I would think I'm too small, and in the past I would think I'm too chubby here, and all those things. I do think I feel the best now, like everything feels good. And don't tell me that in a few years time I can't pull the 120 kilo deadlifts and feel fine, like I've done nothing. I have no DOMs even today. But like, we're just gonna roll with this spring chicken energy. And I think it's so important to look at how you feel mindset wise as well, and with all the other areas in your life. I do believe that we have seasons in life, and sometimes prioritizing this is more important, and sometimes work is going to be more important, and you have to pull back, like Christine has said. Like it's a hard when someone asks me now or like gives me a compliment, I'm like, yeah, I worked hard for that. But it doesn't feel hard on a day-to-day basis because it's like my new norm and it's my new normal. Like I enjoy going to bed at that time. I enjoy not going out for drinks. But for someone that doesn't have those priorities, it might look like hard work. So I think it's really important to like level out those seasons, because then if you go traveling, you probably pull back on your training a little bit and you probably eat a little bit more and your sleep is going to be a little bit less. And that's going to be changing throughout the seasons in your life. And there's always going to be different priorities. So I love what you said there, Nika, that you just have to like work on how you feel and make sure that you feel your best, which whatever season you're in.
I love it, team. I love this conversation. I know it's taken a few different turns. We were, talking about different training styles and training for goals. Sorry, I had to make a point about like the magazine thing only because like that hits home so hard, and I would put money on the fact that I'm not the only one. To you both and to anyone who's listening, it's hard. It's because I know I felt that, and I know I still sometimes internalize that kind of stuff, but it breaks my heart to think anyone else thinks that way, or because there aren't words that I could say to change someone else's mind, just like there isn't words for someone else to change mine. But I just feel like we are in a day and age where it's like we have something like social media where we're more connected than ever. And I think that the kind of messaging you get to see, the kind of people you get to interact with on there, so many people going through the same thing, being able to share their stories, being able to just relate to each other, that we're all in this together. We all probably have the same thoughts, even if we think we're the only ones. I think that's really badass. So I'm stoked.
No, we got into some real talk like today. I think there isn't really enough stories being said of what goes on in the mind of coaches, because they get to people tend to put them up here, and when you do like strong things or muscle building things or things that aren't considered like something that the average person can do, everyone thinks it's amazing, but we all also have our own demons and our own self-talk going on in our head, for sure. And I think as coaches, I think there is a bit of added pressure to look a certain way or to have a certain body composition, because that's what the marketing of fitness is telling everyone. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting topic that we've covered today, because there's definitely no black and white, I feel like, in terms of how we should be training, the pros and cons of performance-based stuff or aesthetic-based stuff. Because at the end of the day, like, we all come from, like you said, the completely different backstories, completely different exposure and training experience, and we've been exposed to different things, and our learning journey has been completely different from one another. So I've quite enjoyed today's topic.
If we wanted to summarize maybe like a few pros and cons, so our listeners can get a few takeaways if they're unsure of where they want to take it goal-wise, or if they need a little bit more structure, what would you say as some pros of like performance-based goals, but also some cons, and then some pros and some cons for aesthetic-based goals?
A pro to performance is that it can be so much more rewarding, for sure. Not just in terms of like getting a PB, but even improving movement quality. Like, skill development and technique refining is still very much contributed towards performance. So even in that journey, like when you're ticking off better movement, and then even like how much better your movement feels outside of working out, that's also a part of the performance journey. And it is so much more rewarding, because it's not, depending how you look at it, it's not so long term. For me personally, aesthetic based goals tend to be a little bit more long term for my body in terms of how it reacts and adapts and there's a lot more rigidity than I'm comfortable to give up. And so based on that, I find performance is like way more suited for me than is aesthetic. But obviously the pros of aesthetic based stuff is that you do feel better in your skin, and you do, you know, maybe I would like myself more in the mirror if I was a little bit more aesthetic minded or aesthetic focused. Because yeah, definitely the cons of performance, depending on how deep you want to go into performance, it can definitely be, you know, something that isn't exactly in line with how you should, like how you want to feel about yourself when you look in the mirror. So yeah, definitely pros, definitely cons, and it's just achieving the balance for me that I think a good marry of both. And then as well as longevity, making sure that I can still lift when I'm 50, 60. I want to be one of those older, you shouldn't call them grannies, but older women that like have completely grayed, but they can still lift. That's where I want to be when I'm older. How about you guys?
I love that. I think we should have added longevity training to this as a goal, because I think personally it's so important. Like, I want to be this strong ass grandma. Maybe I will never be a grandma, but maybe I'll just want to be like an older person that still goes to a gym and lifts. And I think with this generation now, like, look at our parents, they don't go to the gym, at least mine don't. But like with all of us, we all go to a gym. So imagine us getting like into our 80s or whatnot, and we all still go to the gym. That would be so cool. I can't wait to see like more older people go to a gym in the future than they are now, because I think people start younger with training now, but then they also continue training as they get older. I think you summarized that really well, Christine. If anyone is unsure, maybe look at a longevity goal as well, because in the end of the day, we all want to be healthy, we all want to lift, we all want to be fit, we all want to like chase our kids around, or just be able to move, walk up the stairs, chase the dogs and cats around the house. Yeah, do all the things. And definitely either or of the goals will help you with that.
I think what you're speaking to is we all want to feel good, and whatever that means. And like, even if you go down the path and you have a very specific performance goal, I think you still should look in the mirror and be proud as hell of yourself, because you're going after what you want. I think, I don't know, we should always be proud. And that's what we mean by like accruing these wins, whatever that means. Because maybe hypertrophy or like aesthetic that's the only goal. And that's okay too. It's also just being mindful with yourself and kind of just being okay with the fact that, you know what, this progress might take time, and being aware of like the mental struggle that may or may not, depending on the person and their background, may come along with that. And it's like, if you want to forge down that journey, like, I'm here for it. We're all here for it. We're all here to support whatever it is that you or anyone wants to do. But it's just kind of knowing, kind of setting yourself up for success, knowing that, hey, this is going to be mentally, physically, emotionally grueling, and setting up the best system for that.
Yeah, and lastly, it is I know we say this every single podcast, but it is so necessary for sustainable lifestyle change or sustainable training in general. Book a consultation with a coach. It's not just there to tell you how to exercise, what program to do, what classes to do, or what style of training will suit your goals. It's also designed for us to know these factors that we've discussed today, understand your lifestyle, tell you realistically what it's going to take based on like whether your goal is time sensitive, whether you're trying to, you know, like your basic purpose behind like training or wanting to feel better in general. Will also help talk about what has gotten you, like what are the decisions or the lifestyle markers that you are currently in your life that have led you to where you are right now, where you want to change it. And it's just about reverse engineering like what your lifestyle is relative to where you want to be and setting those realistic expectations. I think that's the biggest value in these coach consultations, is that someone will literally map all of that out for you so that you have a completely comprehensive view of what it will take, or what the action points you need to partake in order to get to your goals.
Amazing.
So book one.
So true. So true. I love that.
It's not a cheeky plug. We really mean it. Book it.
So click the link below.
No, I think it's like, we're actually so passionate about helping other people. We just need you to book in so we can do that.
Yeah. And I think also in your membership, it's a part of your membership. So book the consult. We will literally help you. You can find a link in the description to book a call.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope some of those stories have resonated with you, and I hope that you now understand that coaches are just humans as well, and we've all got our own little battles to fight with. But if there's anything that we can help you with, or if you're related to anything, like, don't hesitate to reach out to us, because we're always happy to help.